Welcome to the No Pulp podcast. Now, I know, right off the bat, I got to address it. There's two of us at the desk, but we got Ben Shulman right behind us, joining us virtually on the No Pulp podcast. First time ever, along with Ethan Frank. I'm Ryan Nelson. We're about to have a great time here, guys. I'm ready to talk some college hoops, because you know what? The season's maybe over, but there's still a lot to cover.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't be more excited to talk some college hoop, men's side, women's side, and I'm just so happy to be here with you and Ben virtually.
Ben?
Look, I'm coming from the land of college basketball. I'm from Indiana now, and I can't wait to do men's, women's, everything. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It should be a lot of fun. And honestly, the biggest story this year, from the men's side at least, was of course St. Peter's and how they just took down everyone in their way up until the Sweet 16 at least. But guys, let's go to that first round game again. Kentucky, 2022 Kentucky team. They lost in the first round. But how about last year as well? Another 2-seed that lost in the first round, Ohio State. I just want to ask right off the bat, who's the bigger disappointment? Is it Ohio State last year or is it Kentucky this year?
I got Kentucky. I mean, they were my team winning the tournament in my bracket. I was out on day one.
Oh, that's a bad take, Ben.
And frankly,
bad take.
You know, Gonzaga was such a sure bet that people thought last year to win the title. I thought Kentucky had a lot more consideration to win the title this year than Ohio State. So I think I got to go Wildcats.
I couldn't agree with Ben more here. If you remember on an episode of No Pulp, I said that Coach Cal was a fraud. And guess what? I was proven absolutely 100% correct.
He's not
Coach
a fraud.
John Calipari has not won anything since Anthony Davis was shooting up in Lexington. Coach Cal is an absolute fraud. They make it to the Final Four, and what do? They lose to Kentucky? Or no, they lose to Wisconsin. There's a bunch of guys from Wisconsin. Sam Decker, Frank Kaminsky. Yeah, they're great. But Coach Cal, look at the talent he had on the team. Syracuse has been to the Final Four more recently than Kentucky. I mean, come on.
Ethan, we are literally only a couple minutes in and you're already going off the rails.
Because I'm so passionate.
It's already first Ice Cube time.
Ben's got ice cubes, by the way, in case he gets a little heated up. He's got to cool himself down a
Guess
little bit.
what? I don't care that I'm hot. John Calipari is the biggest fraud in college basketball.
Diesel, I just disagree that John Calipari is a fraud, but I do agree that Kentucky's a bigger disappointment here. I mean, you look at Ohio State last year, Oral Roberts, they were a fine team, sure, but at the same time, this year's St. Peter's team was no better than the Oral Roberts team last year.
No.
And Kentucky,
the Oral Roberts team last year has a potential NBA draft pick in Max Asmus.
Exactly. Yeah. But you look at this year, this Kentucky team was one of the best teams in the country this year. They were a number 2 seed for a reason. They were 26-8 in the regular season. The Ohio State team last year did not deserve to be a 2 seed. They were fraudulently ranked. They were 26.
Oh, now you're throwing around the F word out here.
Okay, whoa. Okay.
Hey, relax. I think we can all agree that St. Peter's looked like it was led by a Daily Orange guard, right? Okay, so, seriously, I agree with you guys. Oral Roberts is a way better team, I think.
I think Oral Roberts was a better team, sure, and also at the same time, Ohio State last year, 20-12, and they were a 2 seed. I think there's more. I don't think it's a disappointment if you're Ohio State. I think they were overhyped by the committee with their ranking. That's what I think it was more.
That's fair.
I just hate John Calipari.
Why do you hate
John Calipari?
Well, he's a cheater. I mean,
he's a cheater.
There are so much. John Calipari is a great recruiter. I'll give him that. But
he's a very good recruiter.
If Jim Boeheim, if Tony Bennett, if Mark Few had the talent that John Calipari had, they would each have at least 3 national championships.
No,
there's no way around that. Jim Boeheim would have won at least 2 championships.
He's playing with only freshmen every year.
I don't care if Jim Boeheim had the talent that John Calipari had at Kentucky for the last decade, he would have won at least 2 national championships.
That's a Pulp alert, by the way. This is the No Pulp podcast. I just thought the Pulp.
That's
way too much Pulp.
Too much Pulp.
No
Pulp. I disagree that John Calipari is a fraud. Like I think the mark of a good coach is being able to get those recruits and churn out NBA talent, and that's what John Calipari does.
Who cares? He doesn't win anything. He doesn't win anything. He's been to the
Final
Four.
He wins a lot of games and a lot of SEC titles.
He's been to the Final Four in 7 years. Look what happens when he gets to the Elite Eight. 2017 loses to North Carolina. 2019 loses to in-conference foe Auburn. And then this year last year they didn't even make the tournament. And then this
Diesel,
year,
if you're calling people cheaters, I wouldn't pull Auburn's win over Kentucky.
okay, whatever. I retract the cheating statement. But it is what it is. Think about who he's lost to. They blew that game, or they came back and then blew that game against North Carolina. They get blown out by Auburn in that Elite Eight game. Last year, they didn't even make the tournament. and then this season lose to a 15 seed led by a guy who's about my height, who has the coolest mustache you've ever seen.
Okay, but are you saying that because of John Calipari, sure he's had some struggles in the postseason, there's no doubt about that, but he's proven to develop NBA superstars.
Okay, yes, yeah. I think his players get much better once they get to the NBA. You look at a guy like Devin Booker.
So does everyone.
He starts him on that path. Does he not?
John Calipari is a great recruiter and a good developer, but I think he's a terrible in-game coach.
I mean, talk about talent. Oscar Tshiebwe this year, he won the Wooden Award as the Naismith for the best player in college basketball.
Yeah.
Do you not give any of that credit to John Calipari?
I do. I just think he's a bad in-game coach. I'm saying he can develop players and bring in talent, but I don't think he's a good.
You were just calling John Calipari a fraud.
He is a fraud.
He's a tournament fraud.
He's a tournament fraud.
To St. Peter's, like
he's
I still don't know the stats they ran.
He's a tournament fraud. He's a tournament fraud.
I wholly disagree. But people who usually are tournament frauds is Gonzaga men's basketball. They are usually pretty bad come tournament time, especially late in that tournament. I want to ask which one do you feel is who needs the title more? Is it Gonzaga men's basketball? Or is it Louisville women's basketball, who has been maybe the Gonzaga of the women's tournament in the past few years?
I want to hear what Ben has to say on this one.
I think it's Gonzaga. I think it's Gonzaga by a lot, to be honest, because Louisville wasn't even the best team in the ACC this year. North Carolina State won the ACC. Gonzaga has been the #1 overall seed 2 years in a row. Everyone thought they were going to win last year. They continue to get really boosted up the rankings for a cakewalk of a conference that we all keep legitimizing to make ourselves feel better about watching Gonzaga in February. It's the same thing again and again, and if they don't win a title, they're going to start slowly sliding down the seeding, even if they keep up good records. Like, they just don't deserve to be a 1 if they can't show up in the tournament.
Yeah, I agree that Gonzaga has faltered, but I'm going to go with Louisville. Because I'm going with Louisville because you look at the amount of times this team has been to the Elite Eight and Final Four in the last 15 or so years. 2009, 2013, 2014, 2018, 2019, 2021, and 2022 is when they've been to the Elite Eight. They've been to the Final Four 4 times, 2009, 2013, 2018, 2022. So they're really...
This man likes his number.
Okay, you know what? I can read and I can count. It's a pretty impressive skill, okay? They've made it so far so many times. They need to get over the hump. Yeah, Gonzaga's there, but there are so many great teams in the men's game. The women's game is only dominated by such few programs, and when you have a talent like Haley Van Lith on your roster, you saw what Emily Angsler said about their head coach, how emotional they got after that game. I just think it's time for Louisville. They've got the talent, and they're just ready to get there, but they just run into buzzsaws.
I will say, Diesel, you bring up a good point in the fact that the game is a little bit more dominated by the concentrated top. You could make the point that they need it more because it's starting to spread out. We saw a lot more upsets this year than we saw in previous years, and it's starting to look like that talent gap is getting closer and closer in women's basketball like it is in men's. So they might need one because the opportunities are just going to be more and more fleeting going forward.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing for Louisville, though.
I think it is a really good thing for Louisville because it allows them to break into those South Carolina, UConn ranges when it comes to the top of the bracket. I agree with Ethan, actually. I think that this is wholly Louisville's, in the hotter seat right now.
Holy.
What?
You getting religious out here? Is holy Louisville?
No, holy.
I'm the one in Indiana.
WHOLLI.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
But I think Louisville,
I knew what he was saying.
Louisville's, I think they're in the hot seat when it comes to this because, yes, Gonzaga.
Get the ice cube. Get the ice cube.
Ice cube. No ice cube.
Got it.
He's got it.
Pause.
He's got a whole tray.
Internet delay.
Hey! He's got the ice cube going. But honestly, I look at Louisville and I look at what they've done so far. One thing that Ethan had mentioned, this is their 15th season under their head coach Jeff Walz, and when you look at that, at some point, he has to produce tournament championships. Like, not just tournament championships, but NCAA championships on top of that. And that's what he's not been able to do. Yes, Mark Few at Gonzaga is able to recruit some great talent and put him into the NBA and, go on his hunky-dory way. But at the same time, Gonzaga is still a top team in all of college basketball. And yes, they've had tournament woes, but I feel like that's not so much on the Gonzaga program as much as the Louisville struggles are on the Louisville program. I feel like Louisville is really in the situation where they need to break out. They are the team in the ACC that should be challenging against the SEC powerhouse in South Carolina, against that Big East powerhouse in UConn, and they just haven't been able to do that. They were a 1 seed this year who couldn't make it to the championship game and win that championship game when they had the talent there. Emily Angsler, Haley Van Lith, and a ton of other players should have been in a championship game this year, and they weren't.
I'm enthralled by your passion for Louisville women's
You're
basketball.
very passionate, I have to say. You guys are almost swaying me. I just still feel like Gonzaga was actually a clear-cut favorite to win the national title, maybe 2 years in a row, and that's why it's hard for me to say Louisville needs it more.
I understand that point, Ben, but at the same time, I feel like men's basketball the tournament has always been about parity and always been about the lower seeds upsetting the higher seeds, whereas women's basketball just hasn't been that way. But yet Louisville, who's usually a higher seed, ends up falling by the wayside early on, while in the men's tournament, Gonzaga, who's the higher seed, ends up losing to these smaller seeds, and that's just part of the game. That's part of the game of March Madness.
You hooked me. I'm going Lamar. I'm going Louisville.
Let's go.
We got Lamar in there. We got Louisville.
You flipped me.
Clean sweep on both the first two topics, by the way. Ethan, pretty good job there. I think, did you win debate championships in high school?
No, I wasn't a debater.
You weren't a debater?
No.
Ben, were you?
I was a debater.
You
I was
were?
I was like 7-0 or something like that. I don't think I ever lost.
The only time I've ever debated someone was in my 7th grade English class. I had to debate a topic. It was about the use of nuclear bombs. I'm not going to go into it right here. But,
Which side?
You must have been a master at that.
There's such a
You must have been a
clear-cut
master
side.
at that.
Oh, I was a great debater. I was fantastic at that.
Dude, the guy who got pro-nuclear bombs.
It was
spot.
I forgot, maybe I got the easy side. I think I like anti-nuclear bomb, which is not that hard to argue.
Oh, God. Ben has lost it.
But
Pro-nuclear bombs?
it was tough for 7th grade.
I don't know how we got from Gonzaga to nuclear bombs. But
yeah,
We're
so
cutting this. We're cutting this. It's fine.
let's end this topic. Let's go on. Let's continue on the women's basketball side, though. You look at this year in the women's basketball tournament, and you look at two big teams who failed, just straight up failed, and it was Iowa and Baylor. Of those two teams, who are the biggest failures?
Okay, I'm going to start on this one, and I'm going to go with Iowa because I believed in Caitlin Clark, and they did great in the Big Ten tournament. Just like the men, they won the Big Ten tournament, and what happens? You lose early. And that's not what should happen when you have the best player on a really good team. You saw it happen with Auburn in the men's tournament. Jabari Smith has no help. They go down. Iowa, Caitlin Clark, and they just go down. It's really unfortunate. Obviously, Baylor, they had the great success last year with the men's team winning their first national championship. But I look at this from an Iowa perspective. When you have a talent like Caitlin Clark, you should be competing for championships. You should be making the Final Four, and they just didn't.
Yeah, I got to go with Iowa, too. And it was kind of the first thing that Ethan said. It was such a buzzsaw of a Big Ten. To win that Big Ten tournament took so much, and I just thought Iowa proved that they were, a 2 seed, but maybe able to beat tons of 1 seeds, and they obviously didn't really get even close to a chance. So they went from the best 2 seed, in my opinion, or the one with the best chance to win the title, to out in the second round.
I do agree with the fact that Caitlin Clark, should have had a bigger impact for this Iowa team. But, I don't think we can just throw the Baylor Bears by the wayside and, absolve them of all their sins. They are a dominant powerhouse in the Big 12. They've won I want to turn into Ethan Frank here, but they won the Big 12 in 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016. They missed 2017, but they got 2018 and 2019, and then 2021. This is a dominant team. They got 9. Ben Shulman knows how to count, unlike myself. But, you look at it, and this is a team that comes out of the Big 12 year after year after year, and yet they can never do anything in the tournament. They can never go far in the tournament. They won the tournament in 2019, sure, but these past few years, they are supposed to be a good team. They're on the up and up. And, you mentioned the Big Ten being a power conference. And don't get me wrong, I'm the biggest Big Ten fan there is.
No, you're not. No, you're not.
You're right. The second biggest, Jacob Morris does exist.
Yeah,
so,
come on.
But, I consider myself a big fan of the Big Ten. I respect them wholly. But, the Big 12 is a dang good conference. And I don't think we should just, let the Baylor Bears just go, waltz on through here and go on their merry way without getting some flack for the performance they put on in the tournament this year.
They did lose by 10 also. I think that factors in. They lost a lot worse than Iowa.
And they were on a 10-game winning streak going into that game, too. They were a good team, on the road, at home, neutral sites this year, and yet they still were unable to get it done in the tournament for no reason whatsoever. And I just don't feel.
Well, they're also in the second. They also have a new head coach. So
Sure.
Baylor, so it takes time to adjust to a new head coach. Kim Mulkey, who
You
won
still have talent on that team.
Yeah, but she won 3 national championships and then she leaves. So I think you have to cut Baylor some slack dealing with a new head coach.
I don't feel like you need a slack. I don't feel like you need that much.
It's pretty late in the year
Yeah.
to deal with a new head coach.
Okay, but
They've
are
won
you
10
really
in a row.
Are you really expecting a first-year head coach to win the
A
championship?
coach who came from the WNBA.
Hubert Davis?
I wasn't
Pretty
expecting.
close.
Yeah, well, I wasn't expecting them to win.
Gotta cool down.
Getting a little hot out there in Indiana. Tell me how's the Midwestern Heat treating you?
The Midwest Heat, it rained for like 12 hours today.
Okay, that's fair. We're probably going to see that rain in Syracuse. Not to turn into a CitrusTV weatherman right here, but we're going to see that rain in Syracuse in the next coming days, by the way.
I don't like that.
Let's
I don't
move
like
on and talk about the good parts of college basketball, because there were so many great things that happened with these tournaments this year. And one of them was, of course, Aaliyah Boston leading her South Carolina Gamecocks to a national championship. But another great redemption story, going back in the history of college basketball, the University of Virginia men's basketball team coming back in 2018 after getting embarrassed the year before. Who's the bigger redemption story, Aaliyah Boston this year or that UVA men's team?
I'll let Ben go first on this one.
Wait, Ben,
Hey,
no,
it's fine.
What?
I
You're
got
just
it.
gonna let Ethan just sit there and just let you go first?
I want to
and
hear what Ben
bounce
has to
off
say. I want to hear what
Well,
he
I
has to
got it
say.
because there's one answer. There's one answer, it's a clear answer.
Okay.
Well, one went to the national title and got back, and that's great and all, but it wasn't that surprising. UVA got knocked out in the first round as a 1 seed and then won it the next year. That's the greatest story maybe in college basketball ever. It's pretty close. It's St. Peter's and UVA, and that's about it. So I think UVA is the clear answer here. It might have been obvious to some that they were going to win coming off that loss, but you go to South Carolina, it was obvious they were going to contend. They beat UConn earlier in the year handily. I had them as the favorite. I don't think it's as good of a story because it's not as unexpected.
Okay, Ben, but here's a counter argument. Aaliyah Boston plus ratio.
I need more than that. Ethan, you gotta give me
I'm
more
getting
than
the ice.
You gotta give me more than that.
You got me.
No, that's the only argument I got. It's Virginia all the way. No one has ever lost to a 16 seed, ever. And it will probably never happen again. I don't know how you could sit here and say that, okay, yep, they made it. They were 1 game away from winning it 1 year, and then they go back and win the next. Okay, they were expected to do that. They were a #1 seed for a reason. Virginia comes out, and think about how close they were to losing in that tournament so many times. Sorry, bringing up Jacob Morris again, but that Elite Eight game against Purdue. You think about the Final Four game against Auburn. I mean, they were dead in the water against the Tigers, and then they were able to come back again in the national championship. So, Virginia's comeback story, not only were they able to come back from that loss, they were able to come back so many times in that tournament.
Ben, I'm going to get to you in just a second, but you got to think about it too. Last year, South Carolina gets on the doorstep of a national championship. They were within 1 point of the national championship, and Aaliyah Boston misses a layup. I know one of us says no laying up.
No
she
laying up.
misses that layup, and they lose the game because of it. And then she comes back this year and is the best player in the tournament and the best player in college basketball.
Okay, but that just proved that South Carolina could get there. She didn't have to hit that layup again. It's not like it was deja vu. Virginia had to beat that 16 seed again, and they did, and then they did more than that. They got all the way there. We knew South Carolina could get all the way to the championship game. It wasn't about Aaliyah Boston overcoming 1 missed layup. We knew she could do that. It was about Virginia overcoming everything you needed to accomplish to win a national championship, and they did, and that's why it's more impressive.
Ben?
I do want to say it's a great story. I don't want to dump on it. It's definitely still a great story. It just compares more to me like North Carolina gets beat by Chris Jenkins and they win a title. It's just, I don't think it's on the level of arguably the greatest college basketball story ever.
I'll be honest. I was just playing devil's advocate. I completely agree. It's Virginia. I mean, like you said,
Ryan's out here like Aaliyah Boston plus layups equals ratio of Ethan and Ben.
If she hits the layup again, then maybe. If she hits a game-winning layup this time, maybe. But I think Arike Ogunbowale is a better story than Aaliyah Boston.
I agree, and the fact that the Virginia, like you mentioned, the Virginia team loses to a 16 seed and then wins the national championship, their first national championship in school history the next year, it's unbeatable in that way. We mentioned, Virginia losing to that team. They lost to UMBC, who made a pretty decent. I mean, that was a great win for them, being the first 16 seed to ever upset a 1 seed. There was a 15 seed this year, we mentioned earlier, in St. Peter's, who took down a 2 seed and made a run to the Sweet 16. Shulman's got to go in there. The Peacocks of St. Peter's. Who's more impressive, St. Peter's or is that UMBC team that took down the Giants?
I'm going to let Ethan go first.
Okay.
Thanks, Ben.
You know what, Ben? That is so kind of you. You are such a good friend. You are the best. And I'm going to say St. Peter's. But why? They won 3 games and UMBC won 1. Just simple math. 3.
You can count.
3 is 3 times more than 1. So I'm going to go with St. Peter's. And look at the teams they beat. They beat Kentucky. And that Murray State team, that was great.
That's a good Murray State team.
That's a really good Racers team. And their head coach just got hired at LSU. So you know that he's a good coach. And then they beat Purdue. Jacob Morris, once again, another shout out. They beat Purdue.
3.
Think about the size disadvantage St. Peter's was off against Purdue. Zach Edey, Travion Williams, and a top 5 pick in Jaden Ivey in the upcoming NBA draft. St. Peter's overcame so much that, yes, UMBC becoming the first 16 seed to ever win a game against the number 1 seed is great, but St. Peter's won 3 games and beat 3 really high caliber teams.
Yeah, it's the 3rd win for me. I think that puts it over the top. But Oral Roberts, you could debate against UMBC, same with Florida Gulf Coast. Maybe Florida Gulf Coast even more because they were kind of the first ones to do it. But to win 3 kind of actually proves that you belong there. I mean, they made the Elite 8. And again, I reiterate, Daily Orange level talent. Like, Thomas Cook would have balled on these guys. But they found a way to beat
I'm going to call cap on that one. I'm going to call cap on that one.
You're going to call cap on that?
T. Cook ain't his name.
Cook, Doug Eddard, I'd love to see.
I'm taking Doug Eddard by 50.
I'm taking Doug Eddard every day of the week.
I got my guy.
Okay, I respect it. I will say, I'm starting to fall onto the side of St. Peter's because they went so deep in the tournament, but I don't think we can trivialize what UMBC did. They were the only 16 seed in the history of March Madness to beat a 1 seed. There is one team.
St. Peter's is the only 15 seed to ever make the Elite 8.
Exactly. I understand that. And that's why I do fall on the St. Peter's side of it. But I still think we need to give some sort of credit to UMBC because they were so unique.
Everyone doesn't get a trophy, Ryan.
I'm not saying everyone gets a trophy. I'm just saying that we've talked a lot about St. Peter's, and we're rolling all over the Peacocks. We love the Peacocks. But don't forget about the Golden Retrievers, who pulled something off that no one has ever done before and no one has ever done since.
Professor Nelson, Mr. Shulman wants to chime in.
Mr. Shulman, go ahead.
I have no Pulp podcast trivia. So this year Ben picked Kentucky to win the tournament. The year UMBC beat Virginia, which team did he pick to win the tournament?
I got it.
Ben?
All right, 3, 2, 1. go.
Villanova.
Virginia.
Darn. I picked Villanova.
So close. I do agree, though, that the Peacock story is just so unique. Again, like you said, that 3rd win puts it over the top. I think the bigger argument would have been, is a team like a Florida Gulf Coast, is a Middle Tennessee, an Oral Roberts, which one of those kind of compares based on how
I got UMBC.
Middle Tennessee.
I got UMBC over both of those.
Yeah, Middle Tennessee got absolutely dominated by Syracuse after. So.
Okay, I know that, but the deeper you go,
Pulp.
I feel like the more you go, the deeper you go into the tournament, the more it turns into like you're not a fluke. You're supposed to be there, and I think St. Peter's established themselves as they were supposed to be there. Whereas UMBC, they lost to Kansas State that next game, and it kind of showed that they weren't supposed to be there.
Right. I think something else you have to think about is look at the coaches that became of those upset teams. You know who the coach of that Florida Gulf Coast team was?
Tell me.
Andy Enfield, who is now the coach at USC and still is the coach at USC after that. They made it to the Elite 8 last season, made it back to the tournament again this season. Shaheen Holloway, we're going to talk about him a little bit later. He's going over to Seton Hall where he led them on a deep tournament run. So it's impressive to see where these coaches go and if they're able to be successful.
Exactly. And now we mentioned coaches, and there was a coach who made the Final Four and the national championship this year.
Coach K?
No, not Coach K.
Coach
He didn't
K.
make the championship game because it was Hubert Davis who actually made it there in his first season with the North Carolina Tar Heels. The guy taking over for Coach K, though, Jon Scheyer. Who do you think is going to have a brighter future as a coach? Is it going to be the new blood Jon Scheyer in Duke in Durham, or is it going to be the guy a couple miles down the road in Chapel Hill and Hubert Davis?
I got Scheyer. I got Scheyer. And I know that the popular answer right now would probably be Davis because of what he just did. But this team played well above its talent level probably for a lot of the tournament. Caleb Love was more national championship Caleb Love than he was all the other rounds Caleb Love for a lot of this year. And Scheyer already has an insane recruiting class coming into Duke. I don't see their recruiting falling off at all. That's why they did this transfer.
Hey, Ben, do you know who the lead recruiter was for all those guys?
Who?
Nolan Smith, who just left for Louisville.
Scheyer's got it.
All I was going to say is Scheyer's got it. I'm going with Hubert Davis because after what everyone around the country just saw is how much these players love playing for Hubert Davis. And they see what kind of coach he is. He's so energetic, so pumped up on the sideline for his guys that players around the country, high school, whether it may be in the transfer portal or just around college basketball, be like, wow, the respect levels for Hubert Davis are now through the roof. This man can coach basketball. They absolutely demolish Marquette. They take down Baylor. They take down UCLA, another team that probably had more talent than them. And it was, Hubert Davis was finally able to get these guys to play to their potential. Roy Williams did not get these guys, and Roy Williams is a great coach. I'm not taking anything away from Roy.
You can't go at Roy Williams and John Calipari in one month.
I won't go at Roy. But last year, it got a bit stale with this group. And this is a group of 4- and 5-star players. And Hubert Davis finally brought that out in the NCAA tournament. And I think that's what you want to see is developing players and getting enough out of them to get to play to their potential. And we saw that from North Carolina. Like they have more talent than a normal 8 seed.
Okay, I agree. I think that Hubert Davis did a great job in getting this group of guys he had in North Carolina to the next step. Jon Scheyer hasn't had the chance to show what he could do as a coach yet. I think Jon Scheyer will have the brightest future, and simply because he's from Illinois. First of all, shout out Northbrook, Illinois, GBN native. I mean, the man Jon Scheyer.
Midwest.
What? Midwest. I mean, who doesn't love the Midwest?
I don't.
Okay, that's a bad take from you, Ethan. But Jon Scheyer, this is a guy to think about. I think about him in the future. He's going to be a player's coach. This guy was a player himself under Coach K.
Basically, every coach was a player.
Okay, yes, sure. But if you think about it,
yeah, but not all of them are like 35.
Yeah, he's 35 years old. He is a young guy who can relate to these college players. He will get them in the building. He'll get inside Cameron Indoor for one game, and they'll be freaking out because they're inside Cameron Indoor, possibly playing for Jon Scheyer at Duke in the next season.
We get it, Ryan. You go to Cameron Indoor Stadium one time, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, as soon as they step in Cameron Indoor Stadium, they're going to... I've also been to Cameron Indoor Stadium.
Oh, so no.
But
I've also been to Cameron Indoor
Stadium. About how great it is. It's a high school gym, okay?
Whoa. It's an electric atmosphere.
Yeah, because there's about 200 people in it.
Don't bring up the Pulp Dome and try and act like it's better than Cameron Indoor. It's not. But Duke Diesel has the #1 recruiting class next year. North Carolina has the 11th.
And the Duke recruits knew Coach K was leaving.
Yeah,
they
it
knew
was
Jon
before
Scheyer
the year.
taking over.
Jon Scheyer was known as the head coach. Spitz was on the outside.
Okay, I get all that, but I think the real question now with Jon Scheyer is how does he replace Nolan Smith, who is going to be his lead assistant because he was a guy who was heavily influenced on all of these #1 recruits. So it'll be really interesting to see how these 5-stars react to Nolan Smith leaving.
I agree that I don't think he's going to lose the recruits.
I don't think he's going to lose the recruits, but it's how does he recruit in the future and who replaces Nolan Smith.
Not to turn into a classic no pulp thing, but I know we're just talking about blue bloods right here. But I think just being a blue blood and being in Duke, I think you're going to be just fine.
Blue?
And keep it blue. It's a blue blood kind of podcast today. But let's move beyond the blue blood towards now to some other teams that got some new coaches. Let's talk about Thad Matta, Sean Miller, and Shaheen Holloway. Shaheen Holloway, we know him from St. Peter's. He's moving on to Seton Hall. Sean Miller, formerly to Arizona. We don't like to talk about how that ended. But
I want to talk about how it ended.
He's wants to talk about that. And then Thad Matta as well. I believe he's going to Butler. Prove me if I'm wrong.
Yep, that's
he's going
correct.
to Butler. And Sean Miller's going to Xavier. Where do you see, of these three guys, who do you think has the brightest out of those guys?
It's Sean Miller, because the first time he was at Xavier, he was so successful at Xavier that he went to Arizona. So Sean Miller has a proven track record of making Xavier a really good team.
But doesn't he bring the baggage of Arizona with him now?
Well, Sean Miller is dropping bags all over Ohio right now. Sean Miller is dropping bags everywhere. Sean Miller, as someone who lived in the state of Arizona and likes to talk about Arizona, things didn't end well. There's no denying that. But Sean Miller is going to bring Xavier back to where they belong. I hate saying at the top of the Big East, but Xavier should be a team that's at the top of the Big East. When Chris Mack was there, they were a team that was getting #1 seeds. And then when Travis Steele was there, they weren't making the tournament. I think Sean Miller can get them back to where he was in his first tenure in Cincinnati and where Chris Mack brought them. Sean Miller is going to be the best out of those three. Shaheen Holloway, I think he's great, but I just don't think Seton Hall is a great program, honestly. And Butler, I feel the same way. And interestingly, all of them are big in the Big East, which is still weird considering that 2 of them are in the Midwest. But Seton Hall, Kevin Willard, he got talent there, but they just never really got anywhere. I don't know how Shaheen Holloway gets more talent than that, but I think he's a good tournament coach. And Thad Matta, he had that one great run in 2007. They had other great runs. I just don't see how any of them could beat the bag dropping of Sean Miller.
Okay.
I don't know, Diesel. If you're using your Xavier argument, last time Xavier was good, it was with him. Last time Seton Hall was popping, Shaheen Holloway was bringing the ball up the court.
Yeah, I don't think he's bringing the ball up the court, Ben.
He's not, but he's going to be telling the guy bringing the ball up the court, Kadari Richmond, what to do, and that guy's got a lot of talent as well. Sorry, a little too much Pulp, but I think watching how Shaheen Holloway...
Get an ice cube.
All right, I'm getting the ice cube.
Get an ice cube. Calm down.
Watching how Shaheen Holloway elevated that Peacocks team and made them play just such good defense. Such good defense. Defense is such an effort, commitment phase of the game, and when a coach can motivate a team to do that, I truly believe he can do anything. They had enough talent this year to be ranked. I think he can really bring them to new heights.
I agree that Shaheen Holloway did impressive things at St. Peter's. He also did impressive things at St. Peter's for 1.5 years. You look at the sustained success, and Thad Matta and Sean Miller have had a success over many
big programs,
many years
at programs
Ohio
bigger.
State.
You gotta pick one.
Arizona.
You gotta pick one.
No, I will.
You can attack me, but you gotta pick
Guess what? He's going one by one. He eliminated Shaheen Holloway already.
All right, I'm getting the ice cube now.
Shaheen Holloway's off my board just simply the fact that I haven't seen enough of him. I think he's a great coach.
Now you're talking like Ben Spector, what, you haven't seen enough?
You know what? Call me Ben Spector all you want, but I ain't shook because I know that I think that Thad Matta's got the highest ceiling out of any of these coaches. I am scared of what Sean Miller can do to a program. You saw what he did at Arizona, and the baggage for me is what really scares me with Sean Miller. I just don't know what's going to happen with him. Why are you laughing back there?
I'm not commenting on that. You guys are commenting a lot on that. I'm not commenting on Sean Miller so much.
It's a proven fact that happened, and he lost his job because of it. I just like the safety of Thad Matta. He was at Ohio State for 13 plus years. This is a guy who's proven himself in the Big Ten. I think he'll be just fine in the Big East as well. Let's go back over to the women's side, though, because there's 2 players on the women's side who are the biggest stars. Basically, if you want to include Caitlin Clark, maybe there are a big 3 of stars in the women's game.
Don't disrespect Haley Van Lith like that.
Haley Van Lith's good. I'm not sure if she's a star on the same level as Aaliyah Boston and Paige Beckers. Ben, I'm going to go to you first. Who is the biggest star out of Beckers and Boston?
Well, I think you can answer this question multiple ways, but if we're talking about star,
I'd like to see you answer it in as
many ways. Who has the most star power? I think it's Beckers. I mean, she's the name, isn't she? I know. I'm not saying she's the better player. Boston might be the better player, but she's in all the national commercials. Boston is definitely really big right now, but Beckers was big for the last year. She'll be big for the next year, regardless of whether UConn is winning national titles or just playing contender. So I think I have Beckers, honestly, by a lot.
Okay, Ben, so that was one way that you could name that Paige Beckers is a bigger star than Aaliyah Boston. You said you could do it in a bunch of ways. How many ways do you think you could do it?
I think she's a taller star, Aaliyah Boston, so that's a bigger star.
Oh,
I think she's a better player, so that's another way that's a bigger star. That's
Wait, better player?
Aaliyah Boston?
Yeah.
Like a better player. You could say, like if they were on the same team, Boston's the biggest star because she's the better player.
just because she's bigger?
No. You're just asking me to name ways she could be a bigger star.
Okay. Yeah, whatever. This is a stupid exercise. I'm also going with Beckers. As someone who's from Connecticut, I know how much Paige
But you don't
Beckers,
like UConn.
No, I hate UConn. But as someone who hates UConn, I hate the men's team more than the women's team. Just from the Syracuse basketball, the women's team. Gino Auriemma is a great coach. I have a lot of respect for Gino Auriemma. But Paige Beckers, everyone talks about Paige Beckers. People in Connecticut love Paige Beckers, and she is the biggest name. When you think of women's college basketball, I think the first person that comes to my mind, at least, is Paige Beckers, and I think that says a lot.
And Ben's snapping right there. I'm going to snap right with him because I agree that when it comes to stars in college basketball, last year, Paige Beckers electrified women's basketball across the country because of who she was and what she was doing for UConn last year. And being as high end of a recruit as she was and getting the same attention as Chet Holmgren was while they're in the same state, in the same region, she was getting as much hype as he was, and she really brought together so many basketball fans to really make the women's game what it is. That's why I think she's the biggest star. Yes, Aaliyah Boston may be the better player at the end of the day, Ben, but I think that when it comes to star talent, I think that Paige Beckers is that player. She had a tougher time this season in the tournament, just because she wasn't playing as well as she probably could have been playing in the tournament. She had a couple good games. She dropped 27 midway through the tournament, but you take it into account, if she's fully healthy next season, there's no telling where she could go in the future. Like, she is so talented beyond belief, and she has the name recognition where, like Ethan said, if you just walk up to a random fan and say, name a women's basketball player in college basketball, they're going to say Paige Beckers.
Guaranteed.
7 times out of 10.
Yeah, easily.
And so I think that's what it really comes down to.
I want to say, I want to clarify, Paige is my bigger star. If I were to do alternate ways for Diesel to find more than one way to name a bigger star, Boston's a better player. But Paige Beckers is a bigger star. She's a bigger deal in the media.
Do we know? Do you want to take a dive into why Boston, even though she's a better player on the better team this year, as we saw at the national championship, why is she still not the biggest star?
Because she plays for South Carolina, not UConn. Yeah.
Is that why?
That's why, yeah.
But South Carolina is a premier program.
It doesn't matter.
UConn is the program.
UConn is the program. The best player on UConn is always going to be the biggest name in women's college basketball. Look, Breanna Stewart, Katie Lou Samuelson. Like, there are so many, Maya Moore. You can go on and on and on. Tarasi. Like, you can go on and on about the names that have played for UConn, and they are the biggest ones in women's college basketball.
So is there no way that anyone from Louisville, from NC State...
They'd have to be so likable and so good that they would trump them.
Caitlin Clark, I think, put a little bit of a blueprint out. You basically have to just be like...
Steph Curry.
Or we have to have like the greatest dunking women's basketball player.
You have to literally be Brittany Griner.
Can Liz Kinley dunk?
You have to be Brittany Griner or Steph Curry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brittany Griner or Steph Curry.
That's fair. That's fair. Now, when you go on basketball as a whole and maybe just college sports as a whole, the biggest thing happening right now is the transfer portal and how big that's been. I don't think Paige Beckers or Aaliyah Boston are entering the transfer portal anytime soon. But when it comes to your personal perspective, do you guys like the transfer portal, or do you think it's ruining the game as is right now?
I'm indifferent.
I'm going to let Ethan go first.
I'm indifferent. Like, if I want to look at it from a Syracuse perspective, I think it gives...
No, this is no Pulp podcast.
Pulp.
No Pulp.
Okay. I think it just gives the coach the flexibility they want to build their roster as they choose, as well as giving the player power to make their own decision. So I think it is a good thing that you can't transfer more than once without having to sit out, because I think that would be a little too much of too much change. But I think when you give the coach time to be able to build the roster how they want, maybe some guys choose to leave. Okay, I don't have to just go with freshmen. I can bring in experienced players. And while that may have, using the Syracuse example, that may have not worked out this year, you look at teams who did use the transfer portal and it did work out. Kentucky.
I kind of have a cop-out answer in a way. I see the good and the bad.
From a numbers perspective, you look at what Xavier Wheeler did, you look at what Oscar Tshiebwe did, and then you look at other teams. Like UCLA last year, what was the big flaw in UCLA? They didn't have a big man who could block shots and play defense at the rim. They bring in Miles Johnson from St. John's to be able to do that. So when these coaches have the flexibility to say, okay, going back to Syracuse because that's the team I know best, Syracuse, what's the biggest need right now? A backup center. Okay, I don't just have to go with a high school recruit to fill that backup center role. I can go look in the portal. Is there a backup center I can get? And there are many teams that do that. Brady Manick is another example. Someone we just saw for North Carolina, had a great career at Oklahoma, decides, okay, I'm going to use my one more year, and look where it gets him. So I think the transfer portal is a good thing.
I think it has positives and negatives. For players, I love it. Because the idea of being trapped at a school, the situation changes so often, and sometimes you get sold on something that doesn't turn out to be what reality is. And I think that players absolutely should be allowed to move. So I'm not anti the transfer portal. However, in an age where we're trying to get people hooked on college basketball, the lack of stability in rosters with one and done already makes it a little bit hard for people to follow year after year. Your favorite team, sure. But think about the fact that Arizona State had like 10 new players this year. Like, imagine if you're trying to casually follow teams and everyone's all over the place. It's just exhausting to follow sometimes. So I think it can hurt ratings at times because people just aren't locked in as much year after year and don't feel as connected to players. Like, there aren't as many guys who make it all 4 years. Also, I don't love how much grad transfers have exploded because to me, that's not a guy getting out of a bad situation. You've played 4 years somewhere. The rule is for people to take master's programs that aren't offered at their school, and you do it to get an extra year. Again, I'm fine with people playing as much college basketball if they want. If they want to give them 5 years, give them 5 years. But let's not pretend they're transferring because, human exercise science is offered at Indiana, but it's not offered at Pitt. That's just a random example. But Xavier Johnson just wanted to leave. It didn't have to do with classes. So I think it has positives and negatives. I do agree with Ethan in the fact that it gives a chance for every team to be competitive every year because you never know who you can lure in and take from the transfer portal. But then again, you never know who you're going to lose, and for young kids and young fans, it's hard to latch on.
I think it is. I agree wholly with what Ben's saying, just because you look at it from the player's side, and really it's about giving them the options. When you look at what happened, let's bring up Syracuse. Let's look at the Pulp podcast for a couple seconds. You bring up Syracuse last year. Kadar Richmond, he was promised a role in this offense, wasn't given the same role he was promised, and he wanted to leave and get a better option. I think he found a better option at Seton Hall for him.
Did he?
I think he found a better option for himself.
It's debatable.
Sure.
It's debatable.
For himself, sure.
Did you hear what Jim said at the beginning of this year? I don't think they wanted to play with each other.
Exactly. And so when you have a coach like that you just don't want to play for anymore, you recruited you one way, and then they switch you up and they change the role they're playing in. They don't give you the desired minutes you want or the desired playing time.
Well, it's a two-way street. I think maybe the coaches are like, okay, maybe this player isn't a fit, and maybe I think there are plenty of times where coaches are like, you should explore your options.
I think so too. But at the same time, I don't know. I fall into the category of if I'm a player and I want to play basketball, I should have the opportunity to go play basketball where I want to play. I made a decision as an 18-year-old kid in high school to play for Syracuse. But guess what? I got to Syracuse, and I've been there for 2 years, and I haven't touched the floor yet. I should have the opportunity to leave and play immediately somewhere else.
Yeah, and that's perfectly fine. But what I'm also saying is that it's not just the player's decision to leave. There could be times where a player says, oh, I want to stay, but the coach is like, there's no role for you here. You should leave. And I think that is a benefit to the portal as well because it gives the coach the power to make their roster as they want and build for both the present and the future.
And to be fair, that guy probably was going to sit on the end of the bench before the transfer portal was a big thing. So isn't it better even if he's in a way forced out? Because no one's forced out. You have to enter the transfer portal yourself. If you get told that you have no role, then you should leave.
Yeah.
But I feel like the players deserve the power, because let's be honest, the coaches hold all the power in college basketball. They're the ones who give you the scholarships. They're the ones who take away scholarships at the end of the day too. I think that the players can have that power. Bring up the Syracuse women's basketball situation. They were in a bad situation under their former head coach, and they had the opportunity to leave the program and go to find greener pastures elsewhere. You look at Camila Cardoso, who won a championship. You find those greener pastures.
Even though she just sat on the bench behind Aaliyah Boston.
I bet she's in a much better space there than she would be
100%.
anywhere in Syracuse. And so I think that giving the players the opportunity and the chances to leave is what's really helpful about the portal. But at the same time, I fall back to Ben's point where the fans, I don't think the fans benefit. I think the fans are actively hurting from the situation we're in right now at the transfer portal. Because like I said, if you're an Arizona State fan and you're like, I'm excited for another season of Arizona State basketball, all my favorite players are here. Oh, they're not here anymore. They're all gone. They've left the 50 programs, and we got 10 new faces in the locker room, and I don't know who the heck Jimmy Joe is playing the forward position right now.
That would be wild if Jimmy Joe was playing the forward position.
Sorry, it's Joe Jimmy who's playing the forward
Joe
position.
Jimmy.
My bad, number 5. I look at that, and I say if I'm a fan, and I want to get a jersey, what jersey do I get if if he might be leaving?
Wait till they graduate.
Exactly. And, I want to be able to have it. And the one part that Ben mentioned that I really love was that the college basketball already has the one and done problem where players come in, they play for 1 year, and they're off to the NBA draft. And, more power to you. You want to get paid your money? Go get paid your money, friend. But when it comes to growing college basketball, I don't know if the transfer portal is the best, allowing this new transfer portal is the best option because it doesn't give fans and people who want to help grow the game the opportunity to latch on to players, to latch on to storylines, to latch on to this guy who rode the bench for 2 years, the Benny Williams kind of guy who's not going to get much playing time, but the next year he's going to explode on the scene for 20 points a game. You're not going to have those stories at the same school if you don't, if you have the current transfer portal the way you have it now.
Jesse Edwards could have transferred. Not to pulp this up again, but who knows? Guys staying make for those great stories where it's 2 years of nothing and then you break out. So yeah, that's how I feel. I don't want to take it away because I believe players have the freedom and should have the freedom, but I'm not necessarily saying that it's also just this awesome thing that's great for everyone.
I agree. The whole thing was do you love it or do you hate it? I fall somewhere in the Ethan Frank of I don't know where to put myself.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I know we're about to wrap this up pretty soon. Can I make a statement that's an unsubstantiated fact that I believe is true?
Please, Ben, go for it.
That's a really controversial thing to say these days, but trust me, it's not that. So we are doing the first remote no-pull podcast.
Yes.
I could be mistaken. Maybe I'm way off. The No Pull Podcast is not the oldest show at CitrusTV.
No.
It's actually relatively new.
One of the newest, yes.
And I believe the first ever episode of the No Pull Podcast was me. I think I was on it.
It was.
I believe I hosted it with Zumbo and Nick Zelaya.
That's a kingly squad right there.
I believe that was the squad. So that's all I got. I just wanted to say that. That's kind of cool.
Now, Ben, prove me if I'm wrong. The No Pull Podcast was your CitrusTV debut, was it not?
The No Pull Podcast was my CitrusTV debut.
Now, Ben, is this your final show in CitrusTV? Is it your final piece of content?
You would think, but then again, who even thought we were going to get here?
That's very true.
No, this is my final CitrusTV show and my final Syracuse student media appearance, unfortunately.
Well, everything starts to come full circle for Ben Shulman. What?
Doesn't it?
It really does. It's very poetic in that way. And it comes full circle for the No Pull Podcast this time around as well. For Ryan Nelson and Ethan Frank and Ben Shulman, it was a fun time talking college basketball with you guys.
It was more than fun.
More than fun, Ben?
It was a blast. It was a blast. I also love you saying for Ryan Nelson when you're Ryan Nelson.
Well, you know what? I'm thinking for myself. I really am. I'm always speaking for myself. And that's it. All we have for the No Pull Podcast this time around. Make sure you tune us in next week as well. We'll have more content for you then. But for right now, I'm saying so long and have a great rest of your day.